So remembering that there is this transition dashboard the first time that you log in, or if you timed out for your session or anything like that, that is the time that you see this one here. Single sign-on, the one we are working towards is ITSO matrix, where we'll be spending the better part of today's session, of course. So let's go ahead and hop in here. I'll just close up this other tab. I don't think we'll be using any of the other applications for today. And now we're on the main dashboard for matrix, the ITSORealEstate.ca matrix that we're using here. Remembering as well, so some things already from the start from Monday, remembering that the entire dashboard is, you can manipulate it, you can move these things around. So don't worry, if yours looks, well, yours is most likely going to look different than mine. Anytime you close out an application, it just gets tucked away in additional, and you could always just drag it back out of that section. All right, as far as today's session, there's two main topics that I'm going to be discussing. The very first half of the session is all based around communicating and sending listings to clients. So we're really going to focus in on the client portal for this, since just the way that we send listings to our clients by using ITSO Real Estate and the matrix system is it doesn't send just like a PDF copy or a printout of the listing, right? We are in fact sending them what is called a client portal. It's an interactive tool that your client uses as they interact with that listing, right? If I just email one listing to one particular client that I have, they're gonna have options to look at particular maps that are interactive. They could see different things, find out other, possibly even things like schools and parks in the area through some of these interactive maps. And still inside of that portal, they will access the listing information. So it's more of an interactive tool, and we will be focusing on that one, and especially the concept of automating when you send listings to clients. On our system, we call it the auto email. So in this first half of the session, we're going to be going through the steps of actually setting up an auto email. I think if there's any dual members here, I want to say that on the TREB side in Stratus, they call it setting up kind of prospects, if I'm getting that word right. But yes, we will be tackling the auto email, and then as well concluding with ways that you can get notified with how your client is interacting with those portals, those auto emails, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so that's the first half of the session. As soon as we're finished up with that, we will transition into a new concept that we haven't touched on just yet, which is inputting a listing on this system. So if you are the listing representation and you're putting together a listing, we'll go through the different tabs. I want to make sure that you really understand how to approach it, things to bear in mind, some tips and tricks to get you through that input screen so you're confident when you go to put up a listing. Right, all of that happens in the add edit section, and it will take up the better part of the second half of today's session. Of course, as soon as we're done with those two main topics, I'll do a really quick conclusion and open the floor for a bit more of a formal question and answer period before we say our goodbyes for before the long weekend, of course. So as far as our very first concept, though, we are jumping into all those concepts that have to do with sending listings to clients. Okay, so in order to do that in the first place, in this first topic, we have to have some listings to work from. So what I'm going to do is take some of those ideas and things we learned in the session on Tuesday, our introduction to matrix. I'll go through some of those steps so you can watch how I normally set up a search, put together some listings, and then we'll start sending those out. We'll set up an auto email. All that'll kind of stem from the listings that we track down. So I'll hop into a residential search here, right? Being used to the different screens here that you use in the residential search, right? Remembering that it really is, it's meant to be the fields that line up when the listing agent is putting a property on the MLS system, right? We're trying to track down what it is that they might have selected. We're going to refine our matches, right? Right now we're looking at a totally open system of potentially 21 or more real estate boards, a lot of different data all at once. So we're going to refine that down to what our client's looking for. Okay, we're going to say our client in this case is looking for a property specifically in the Oakville area. Okay, they like, maybe the neighborhood that they mentioned was something like Central Oakville, kind of around and about, so a little bit north of Lakeshore Road. So we'll look at that type of space, maybe a couple different intersections that we're going to fill in there. Price range, just being that that's the area for our case study, we're going to go with something like maybe 1.6 or 1.7 million to 2.5 million. And they are going to look for just a house. Okay, so even with that small couple of things that we've broken down, if you happen to be in one of my sessions in the past, you would know that I absolutely am very much a visual person, which at this point, when I set up my location, I do all this from the map rather than starting out and kind of finding my areas and typing in things like Central Oakville and trying to track them down through this list. I do head over to the map for that. So I'll give you a couple tips for that. Very first thing here, and hopefully, there we go. Looks like took a little second to load because I still left it as 5,000 plus matches. So one little trick here, right? I am going to be drawing on this map by incorporating some tools, some drawing tools, choosing which location I want to work from, right? Remembering that the pins and all of these listings that kind of go into the groupings and then into the individual pins, well, they can only exist in a portion that you draw on the map. Right now it's completely open because I haven't drawn yet. But if I draw something, for example, even if I just take a rectangle and I put it out in the water here, well, there aren't any pins or listings that are out in this space. And I might just get to 0 listings as a result, so that now it just loads much more quickly, right? I know I'm not going to be using listings in Kitchener, listings in Brantford, all that type of stuff, but getting it to 0 listings, it might just make it a little bit easier to work with the map without all the distractions on it. Okay, so normally you'll probably see me doing something like that, drawing it out into that open space with the intention that I'll get rid of that rectangle once we've set out our location. Next step for myself normally has to do with turning on a layer. So activating something like a neighborhood layer, which is going to give me an overlay on top of the map. So it's a lot easier to work with, right? Allowing me to kind of choose, right? If it is like a specific area, I can follow the boundaries and the lines where the pins are going to go. In this case, right, we spoke a little bit about perhaps Central Oakville, so I'll use that as the main space. Maybe we'll go out a little bit here towards Chartwell, maybe even into 4th line kind of thing, to allow a couple extra blocks and a few other pieces of neighborhoods here. So what I'd end up doing here, probably just heading over to Chartwell in that case, doing something like a draw polygon. Ooh, looks like I missed a little bit. I'll just try to do this as closely as I can. Don't worry about how far you go out into the water, of course, because there won't be any listings there, but probably go all the way to like 4th line here. And then I'll just make my way around. Maybe zoom in a little bit and follow Spears Road here. Alrighty, so just joined up at the other end of my drawing, and now we actually have a space that holds those listings that we're looking for. Okay, now it's getting a lot closer to what our client was after, and we've landed into 51 different listings in that space. Okay, so at this time, right, I can start getting rid of some of the things on screen. Perhaps I delete this shape. Perhaps as well as we go in there, maybe we don't need this overlay with kind of all of the neighborhoods there anymore. So we could just turn that off. Okay, and then we're well on our way. We have this drawing, we have this area set up, and it was really, really quick to do that, right? Even though I might not be well-versed in the exact names of the neighborhoods and how they're broken down, well, I've accounted for all the different ones in this drawing, right? There might have been like 4 or 5 different neighborhoods in this space. I really quickly got around that and just drew instead of choosing them out of a list, which I find is a lot easier in some cases. So we're going to work with these. Normally I like to have a quick look at them as well, just to see if, hey, even that price range that we spoke about, is it even going to be a viable option after our conversation with our client? I'd say it's probably not too likely that we'd get something south of Lakeshore, especially in our price range, but we're definitely going to get some in the north section here towards Spears Road. And at this point, now we're refining 51 listings instead of the 5,000 plus for the whole system. So at this time, I'd be kind of heading into my criteria screen and then kind of switching to changing some of the things that our clients set out. So we know one of them is the fact that they're just looking for a house in this case. So that's something that's going to probably drastically make a change to these matches. Could even, oftentimes it'll cut it almost in half and stuff like that. So it looks like we're down to 30 matches as a result just with that selection. And we did specify a price range. Like I said, 1.7 to 2.5 or something like that, or 1.7 to maybe 7 matches will be fine. 2.4. Yeah, we'll just go with that. So 1.7 million to 2.4 million. Pretty wide kind of range here, but give us 5 matches that we can kind of look through and see what, if it is what our client is after. So noticing as well, right? Always, every time we make a decision on this screen, keeping an eye on the number of matches, because if we hit 0 too quickly, right, it's not going to be helpful if we just have nothing to show for. So really, like, one of the main things that we're trying to avoid is a really common inquiry that I get on the phone is when an individual or a member calls me and they've just made way too many selections, right? If you choose like 15 different things on this screen and you start making too many selections at once, you very quickly get down to a low number of matches in some cases. Like, we did specify a pretty specific little chunk of Oakville for this that our client was after. And based on even just our price range and the fact that we chose house, we're already at a very refined search in this case. So at this point, right, you're always going to see me moving in between these 3 main tabs. This is how you keep an eye on what you're working on. It looks like the 5 that we have are all pinned in this location, almost like in a really good way that let's say later on down the road, you decided that you were going to actually view these, right? Well, you can even view all 4 of these all in a line. It just kind of ended up really kind of in a nice straight line here across Rebecca and Lakeshore type of thing. So we've got our 5 matches. We could jump to our results and get a closer look here. So one concept that we did discuss and considered from the results screen here this past Tuesday as well was the fact that you have to make changes to this screen. The default that they give you is not going to work. It's not good enough. It's just very, very inefficient. So understanding that, right, I have a tab here called neighborhood, but I put it there myself on purpose so that I can see this when I'm working. And you would have a totally different look to your screen based on how you move these around. Okay. So in just really, really quick review here before we start sending these listings out, when you're customizing your display, remembering that you can see your 4-pointed arrow. Anytime you hover into the gray space of a title, you can just drag and drop to a different location. And if you're inserting or removing a column, for example, maybe I'll just remove this blank column because it doesn't have anything in it right now. It just looks like it's a spacer. Well, if I click on it, there's a remove column option. You can click on that and now you'll see it's gone. Okay. Same thing would go if what's something that might apply to us? I don't know. I'm just going to go with region since it's the word that came to mind. But if I was to do something like an insert column and I clicked in the gray space, clicked on insert column, gives you the whole list of every available field for these columns. If I choose something like region and click add, let's see where my region ended up. I think my internet might be running a little bit slow. There we go. It popped up next to the city here. So now I have neighborhood, address. Oh, let's go this way. Address, neighborhood, city, region, right? You can even add in postal code and whatever the case is as you do that keyword search, right? So you make your selection. I'm going to hit cancel here. I think I have enough to do with the region and stuff like that. But that's a really good way for you to find out what the region is as well, right? Maybe I'm working in Kitchener a couple weeks from now and I'm not very familiar with it. What are the regions in Guelph? What are the regions, the cities, the neighborhoods? Right? So really important to kind of add these on. They'll really help in those outside areas. The final piece of this, however, if you make any changes to this screen, remembering that you have to set that as the new default, or else it's just going to go back to the way it was when you come back to this screen next time. And how you do that is this gear icon, clicking on the first option here. So it's a bit of a mouthful, but set current display, sort order, and count per page as my search starting default. I'll get a pop-up confirming that the changes have been set. And now next time I come in here, I can expect region to be in here, as well as that one kind of imaginary square that was here before. Okay, so customize this screen. Yours must look different than mine because you're going to have things and you're going to want to look at things in a different order, right? You have a whole bunch of different pricing types that you can put in. Maybe you're doing a CMA down the road and you need things like sold price, list price, I don't know, whatever comes to mind, right? And put all of them so you see them in a column. You could work with your properties very quickly. Okay. One more thing that has happened so far is what we've done to track down these 5 listings is we've refined the system for this summary down below. So we chose that it was going to be a residential property type. It would be only active status. We were only looking at houses. We drew on the map. This is what the latitude, longitude is specifying. And we have a very specific price range. So these 5 elements of criteria is how it refined to those 5 listings. Okay, you can always refer to this spot if there's something that you missed, right? If I happen to have clicked something on the criteria screen by accident, something like fully winterized, which might just be an optional piece on the input, and I wasn't intending to search with that, I just might have clicked it by accident. Well, when you look at your summary, it's very easy to find out that you might have done an error, right? I'm reading through here. Okay, residential, I did want that. I wanted this one. Ooh, winterized is fully winterized. Ah, I did not want that, right? You just go right back to criteria. It's a lot easier to look at the summary than it is to look at this really busy criteria screen, right? Where you might not notice that just at the bottom, as I was moving through things, I might have just checked that by accident. Get rid of it, get back to your results, and you can just confirm that those are the 5 that you were looking for. Okay, perfect. Well, now we're off the ground running, right? We have our listings. I mean, of course, there's going to be some other steps, right? We're going to make sure that it's the number of bedrooms that they're looking for, right? Maybe we drop this one off. Maybe there's not enough bedrooms in this property. They were looking for something with 3 or more, whatever the case may be, right? But I think we're just going to use the 5 that we have. Pretty straightforward here, right? Can always preview some things about it. Have a look at the photos really quickly across them from here. If you want to go into more detail and go into the listings, right? Remembering we could just click on the listing MLS number. Once we're in here, having a look at everything, right? The way that you would get back to your screen, and this part is pretty important as well, right? Whenever I'm working on ITSORealEstate.ca, even when I'm using web forms and other kind of time-sensitive applications such as Matrix, I really need to get into the habit of never clicking on my backspace arrow. Hopefully you never catch me clicking on it. If I do, I might tell you that I'm doing it on purpose for a really specific reason, but I rarely click on this, okay? And the reason for it is you always want to move in a forward direction. So I'm stuck on this listing right now and trying to get back to what I was working on. Well, the option on this page is called Member Single Line Display. When I click on this, it takes us back to this rows and columns look for our results. So always bear that in mind. There's always a way to move forward. I won't click on a listing and click the back arrow. No ways. I'm definitely going to go in a forward direction, something like this here. Okay. So now that we have these, we're just going to assume that we went through, you know, it's the right amount of bedrooms and really meticulous things that they wanted. Well, we did those out and got rid of them, that kind of thing. But the next part that we want to look at now is, so we have these listings. How do we send them to our client? Okay, we have a couple different ways of doing that. The most kind of simplified way is just these front options. So notice how we have action buttons towards the bottom. right? They're grayed out right now, and in order to perform an action with them, we just have to select the one that we want to work with. So towards the top, right, I could select all 5 at once. I can maybe select the individual ones if that was the case. But when you do make a selection, it allows you to perform an action. Okay. Right on the front, you can already see some of the ways that we might send these out, right? Maybe I print them and it's more like in person. I'm going to hand them a physical copy. Email would be sending a direct client portal that they access to see the listing information and the interactive tools. Okay, and the one that we are going to be focusing on a little bit today, though, is setting up an auto email. And setting up an auto email is in the same section as on Tuesday when we saved our search. So it's tucked away back here. In the save, you have 3 different tools. You can either save as just a new saved search. You can set this up as an auto email, or you can do a speed bar shortcut. Okay, we are looking to set up a new auto email. Okay, if I want to hop in here, click on new auto email. And for this screen, it looks very much like just a generalized email, right? We're talking subject line, who are we sending it to? What is the message going to look like? So really the top portion here is pretty straightforward. We'll come back to it and talk about it a little bit more in a moment. As we work down, we could see criteria is specifically what we had in our summary below our results page. And then there's some features based on, hey, how are our clients going to be notified about the listings that are making their way in? Okay, so if you've never set up an auto email in the past, I'll just give you a really quick description here. What is going to happen is when we share listing information, we're providing our client with a portal that they use to access that listing information. What an auto email will do is it automates a portion of that process so that if in the future, any new listings that hit the market, if they meet this criteria that we've set out, well, it's automatically going to send those to our client's portal and they'll be able to look at that new listing information as well. So just by default, an auto email in general, it just is one of the most commonly used ways of keeping your client in the loop, keeping them engaged in the process as a potential buyer or whatever the case may be that there's a whole bunch of reasons why you might set up an auto email, but yeah, it is a really common way to keep your clients engaged and in the loop in their search. So we'll start by setting this up in really kind of the email format from top to bottom here. First thing is selecting your contact. So if you haven't created one just yet, you can just create a new contact. Notice mine are generally pretty straightforward here. Let me see what I can select here. Maybe I'll choose one of the random emails that I've set up for this. So let's go with just myself here as an example. Okay. You can as well, this we might have to discuss a little bit. We'll discuss it a little bit more once we get into the portal and stuff like that. But since this question does come up, you can absolutely put multiple individuals so that it sends it to multiple people at a time. Okay, there could be multiple recipients, let's call it. There is something to be careful about that, however, right? If you are, let me see, I might have one here that I could show you. For example, right, I did a little bit of testing here with myself on a bunch of different levels, right? So you can have a whole bunch of different email addresses built into a contact, or you can CC different individuals onto this option, or you can even BCC yourself a copy so you can keep an eye on the fact that they're receiving new things or whatever the case may be. The thing to be extremely careful with, however, is whoever receives the portal has access to those interactive tools within the portal. And we're going to see shortly when we're looking at those tools that, well, you can do things like discard the listings that are in there, right? If let's say it's husband and wife, and husband was planning on looking out on the listings on Saturday, but before Saturday even comes about, wife Stacy has gone in, she's already discarded 3 of them that she didn't like, and then husband Mark just thinks, well, I've never received any listings. well, they were in fact discarded 2 days ago type of thing. So usually, even if it's the scenario of like multiple clients looking and prospecting together, I typically would send them a separate portal, or at least let them know, like, when you do something in the portal, it affects all the other individuals. So bear that in mind, because it is a very interactive tool, of course. Okay, I'm just going to select maybe myself here as an example. What do we do as a subject line? I mean, it really is going to depend on your own kind of rapport and situation with the client, of course. If it's something really professional, or right, it could be like properties of interest, could be something to do with their name or future home or whatever the case may be. Maybe I'm just going to go with something like that today, right? Your future, right? Something like that. Maybe I'll put, just for myself, I'll put an apostrophe at the end so I know that this one's the one from today. I'm sure I've used this title in the past. So let's go with that. There are two different emails that can come about. The very first one being the welcome email. It provides you, of course, for these email types, it gives you a little bit of a, just a system default. You can make changes to it however you'd like, right? It just basically welcomes them to the portal, gives them a little bit of information on what's to come about. And there is one really, really important thing, however, at the bottom of the welcome email, which refers to clicking on the link to start the portal experience. Okay, so if you are changing this and removing things from the default, no problem, like change it up however you want, type your own message. Just make sure that you have some indication to click on the link, however, because the thing with the automated portion of these emails is they still have to be activated. It becomes activated when your client clicks on that link in the welcome email. Okay, it'll always have a link, so keeping a description there that'll explain that to them is very important. Okay, same thing as our results screen. If I make a change to the welcome email, I'm going to click on this gear icon and set it as the new default welcome email text. Okay, if you ever want to go back to the kind of the system default as well, you saw there was 3 paragraphs before. I deleted one of them. Well, if I want it back, I can always just click reset system default text, and this would be the actual default that the system had before, right? If I did get rid of something or change the wording, I would click this option here though, so that it's set up that way next time I create an auto email. The recurring email is a little bit different. That's the one that they receive when something new happens in the portal, right? 2-3 days from now, when a listing hits the market and meets those 5 key components of our criteria, well, it's going to start like so. They'll receive the your future home subject line, and in the body of the email, it'll say, hey, 1 or more new or updated listings match your criteria, and it will give them a link below to access that portal once again. But sometimes it'll even give them a little quick snippet of probably that property and that kind of thing. But these are your 2 emails. So you see very, very standard here. If you wanted to change this one up as well, same thing. You have your gear icon down below. Looks like I probably do. Oh, there we go. It's gone away. So those are your 2 email types, followed by your signature. So you can always edit it, copy it over, bring something into this space if you did want to have kind of a bit of a signature towards the bottom of it. All right, this part we already know since we were talking about it while we were on the results screen, right? This is the bread and butter of like what is governing this auto email. What types of listings are actually going to meet and land in your client's portal? Well, the automated portion of it is that it has to meet the criteria in this section, right? It's only going to get there if it's actually specifically a house with active status in and around, like inside of the drawing that we made on the map. It would have to be pinned right in there, and it would be in our price range. Then it would be okay for it to go through to our client's portal. Okay, once that is all set out, right, that's the main portion of the settings that you have. Let's talk a little bit about this section here. Now, this all has to do with how often and kind of the schedule here for when is your client notified about these changes to the portal. Okay, concierge mode we'll come right back to. Okay, So what I'll do is I'll actually talk about the schedule first. I think that usually that one makes a little bit more sense. I'll start with the schedule. Okay, you notice when you do activate concierge, the schedule does go away. So I'll explain that all in a second. There's something really, really important to understand with the schedule. Okay, if we're comparing daily to as soon as possible, these are very, very different options. Okay, as soon as possible means that when there is a new listing that meets the criteria 3 days from now, well, it's going to be sent straight through to your client's portal, assuming that they've clicked on the link and activated it, of course, that we have as a given. So that listing hits their portal. As a result, what'll happen is they'll receive a notification in their email right away that's telling them this here, recurring email, one or more newly updated listings match your criteria. Okay, so that'll happen for as soon as possible. They just get an email notification right away when something meets the criteria and hops in their portal. Daily, this one is very, very different. Okay, so what'll happen with daily is what you choose for this timing, they're going to get an email no matter what, whether something has changed or not. They're still going to get a notification. So that's where it really, really differs. Okay, if I choose every single morning in the AM, I've tested only a couple times, and it was like 7 in the morning pretty religiously, or somewhere between 7 and 8 AM, it would give me a notification. However, like that notification that they receive, it'll speak on any changes, right? Let's say there are 2 new listings that happen between the Monday one that came in the morning and the Tuesday one that came in the morning. Let's say there are 2 listings that kind of popped in between that time. Well, the Tuesday notification will say, hey, there are 2 new listings in your portal. It'll do that recurring email. But what happens if there are no new listings that meet this criteria? Like, we really refine this. There was only 5, right? What happens if there isn't one that meets the criteria on Wednesday or Thursday, and it isn't until Friday that there is in fact a new listing that meets our criteria and goes to the portal? Well, your client is still going to receive the notification Wednesday morning. They'll still receive one Thursday morning as well, because the schedule, the daily schedule, is not linked to the new things happening. Whether something new happens or not, your client is still getting an email that pretty much, if nothing has changed, it's just going to say, hey, right, here's a portal, you have a portal, don't forget. It's more like a reminder, don't forget, here's a link, access your portal. So what I mean by that is just maybe don't get into kind of this scenario where you select all of them. If you're sending 2 notifications per day, like 14 notifications per week to your client, and you refined it so much that not much changes, this can get very overwhelming very quickly. Okay, so just bear in mind what you're doing, right? Like if your client told you, hey, yeah, you know what, I'm probably only going to go into my portal on Fridays. Just want you to notify me so that I don't, just because I tend to delete my links, and I think I might lose the link and I'm not going to be sure how to get back to my portal. Just send me one maybe Friday morning or something, and even one on Sunday. Maybe I'll check it with my breakfast or something like that. Okay, so daily, very, very different. There's also pros and cons for as soon as possible though, right? We chose something very refined. I'd be very confident in as soon as possible that it isn't gonna bombard my client. What if instead of drawing this, our client was more open about their search and they were like, yeah, you know what, send me properties in this price range for the entire Oakville area. Well, technically there might be like 100, right? And by next, Friday, between now and next Friday, there might be 40 or 50. That could be 40 or 50 individual emails in 1 week if we're not refining it enough. Okay, so how you gauge this between ASAP and daily is probably going to be governed a lot by how refined your criteria is as well. So just bear those in mind. Consider the different sides of it. Okay. The other option that you have is concierge mode. So that's kind of the next portion here. What concierge mode will do is it allows you to act kind of like a filter in between the listings that meet the criteria and the listings that actually go to your client. It would give you like one more chance at refining it manually, right? We have 5 listings for our client. Let's say a new one hits the market tomorrow. Instead of it going directly to my client and them getting a notification, what would happen instead with concierge mode is I will get the notification. It'll say, Eric, you have 1 new listing awaiting your approval. I go in there, I have a look at the listing, I find out there is no in-ground pool, I discard the listing, right? Something like that. Something very specific, like how close it is to a GO station, something that I might not be able to do here if I have a very particular client. I might put on concierge mode and manually deal with it so that they're not getting bombarded by something that they want that's very, very specific about a particular property, let's say. Okay, so that's concierge mode. We're going to follow this up by, I'll show you in a few moments how you manage your concierge mode ones. But yes, it pretty much puts you as a filter. You have the automated portion that's set up. You're still a filter in the middle. Your client only receives the ones that you choose to approve for them. It also means that you do have to stay on top of it, however, or else your client won't get anything unless you approve them. So kind of a two-sided sword there, or whatever you want to call it. Just you do need to stay on top of this and respond in a timely manner so that your clients are getting those listings. Uncheck this. Okay, and the last thing that I guess I will mention is right here, something to be really careful for. Please do pay attention to this section here. It looks very similar when you're just sending an individual email, okay? This is the section through this additional button where you can change the actual display that the recipient will see, okay? What I mean by that is when you send a listing to a client, the system by default will always send it in client full. Client full hides the sensitive and private information. It won't show the seller name. It will not show the section that is the brokerage or the private remarks, right? It's not going to show the commission structure. It's the client version that's meant to send out, and the system will send that one out by default unless you manually change it. It is manually changed right here in this button though. Okay, so if I click on this and then I change the display type over to memberful, well, now it will include that information. Okay, whoever I send this auto email to, they're actually going to receive a copy that's going to have, it'll have the supplements, right? Things that usually only the buyer representation has access to. So it'll send the supplements, it'll send the private remarks, it'll send the commission structure, things like that. So the only time that I'd be switching it to member full really is maybe if I'm sending it to someone in my team, or I'm sending it to a colleague, or I am sending it to a cooperating agent that asked for it specifically, okay? But I do want you to know where it is. Just hopefully everybody understood that part though. Like I wouldn't be sending this to a potential buyer. There's way too much info in there, sensitive information about the property. Okay, so if I go back and I just change this to choose additional display, back to the default, then it'll send the client full version, which is what I want. Okay, I'm also going to switch this really quick to my email, eric@omdreb.ca. And the reason for that is you will notice, right, that is my main email that I use at OMDREB. Since I am going to be firing this one off and clicking save, I did want to use a kind of a fake email first, so that you can see, right, I can't enable concierge when I am the recipient. But before, when I had a fake email showing, I was able to at least toggle it on and show you what it did. Okay, but I'm going to choose Eric@OMDREB for this, and before I hit save here. Okay, I think everything's good to go though. Remember our little random apostrophe here. Perfect, that should be good to go. And I'll just do as soon as possible since ours is, it's pretty refined, of course. And just click save. Created auto email your future home. Perfect. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do now is we're going to follow up by looking at, well, how do I know if that auto email, if my client's receiving it, right? What are the statuses? How will I know when it's actually going to be activated, and how do I know if it's working properly? Okay, so we're going to hop in to our My Matrix section. We have a dedicated auto email section as well. And that's where we're going to go at this time. So let me hop in there. Something to note, I guess, before the question comes up is, hey, how quickly does this auto email get sent out from the system? Okay. I wish I had an exact number to give you on that. I am a little bit unsure. I've tested it with it multiple times. I've seen it as quickly as something like 10, 15 minutes, but I have also seen situations where in the training, I've set up the auto email. I sent it to my Eric at OMDREB, and I didn't get it till like 4 p.m. Okay, so that welcome email, wish I had a direct answer, but I'm not sure if it is a scheduled time, like if it always happens at 4 o'clock of a certain day, or if it's like very quick, but I've also received it very quickly. So if it pops into my email during the session, I will open it up and show you that welcome email, but I have fired it through. So I'm keeping an eye on my inbox on the other screen, just in case it does land in there while we're talking about it. Okay. What we are seeing here as well. So we'll break down the different things on our auto email screen. I've got 9 set up right now. Looks like it's all me. I probably should turn some of these off because I do get notifications like every day after setting up these trainings, but really we do have 3 main status types that we're working through. Okay, so we have one here with like a red exclamation point. If I hover and I kind of wait on here, I know maybe it's just being difficult right now because my internet's slow, but it'll tell me that this is a disabled status. Okay, so we have disabled, we have one that's kind of pending activation here, which is the green with a white fill. And then once it is working properly and active, right? Once the link in the welcome email has been clicked on and it goes to that active status, it fills up with a little bit of green and it has a white check mark. Okay, so these 2 here you would see are the ones that are working properly. The 2 that I have here are still awaiting activation, just like the one that has the apostrophe at the end, which was ours from today. And the last status being disabled, well, it could get disabled for a number of reasons. Okay, I'm hoping that I can hover these and that it'll tell me, but I think my internet's just being difficult here. So I'll try, let's just have a look, right? Anytime that we drop down this list from the left menu, it's a bit of like an accordion menu, right? So you look at one thing, you can open up different sections here. I could see that when these emails were sent. So it looks like I ran this one as an example, February 18th of this year. And the initial email was never actually viewed. So let me see. I wonder if I disabled it myself. I can go into the settings here and find out. Disabled, welcome email ignored by client. Well, yes, it looks like since February 18th, there's been about 2.5 months. Myself, even though I am the client, it looks like I never did activate it for this specific one. And as a result, it moved to disabled status. Okay, so let me go back to, or maybe there's a cancel towards the bottom. Yeah, let's hit cancel. If I look at another one here, I know there's some that I have disabled through inactivity. So let's see if I can find one. Ignored by client. Lovely. That one's the same as the other one. Okay. This one has had a portal visit. Let's go have a look. Disabled by agent. Okay, so a little bit of a different status and reason for it being disabled, right? It means that manually this one here, I selected it out of the list and I clicked the disable option. So perhaps for this one here, right, it might be the case where your client has asked, hey, you know what, I've been looking at properties for a couple weeks now. I think I just want a little bit of a breather. Let's turn off that automated portal for now. Maybe a month from now, we'll turn it back on. Well, in that case, I might just disable it, right? And if I ever wanted to enable it once again, we'd just hop into the settings. We'd be right into that screen that we were working on when we set it up. And we just switch this to enabled and click save. Okay, same thing. It'll send out a new welcome email. They will click on it and it'll move from this white one over to the active status. Okay. It doesn't look like I have any good examples here of what'll happen if it if it hasn't been used in long enough, but the timing is 50 days, if I'm not mistaken. So if your client has not gone into their portal for a period of 50 days, it will automatically move to a disabled status. So if you ever notice that, right, you could just reach out to your client, or you could just reactivate it or reach out and let them know, oh yeah, I noticed here the reason is because you hadn't been in there for a couple of months. I'll just re-enable it for you. Click on the link and we'll be good to go. Okay. Aha, we're in luck for today. 1:51 p.m. Your future home. We got the welcome letter. Here it is. I can't say that that's the case for all the sessions. Honestly, I think like 50% of the sessions, maybe I'll actually get the email and we can look at it. Usually what I'll do is I'll set one up in the morning that I can have that's close enough kind of thing that has similar listings. We did get ours though with the apostrophe, which is really nice. So we can see what the button looks like and this, please click on the link. So this is what your client would be receiving. Okay. The only thing I can zoom in on, unfortunately, in an email is just this text though, but I'll still do it because seeing that there might be a range of devices or some of the members that joined us maybe on an iPad or iPhones and things like that. Hopefully this is a bit easier to see, but this is in fact just the welcome letter that's we've just set up. So if I move this to the side a bit, right, we're talking about this one here, your future home, exclamation, apostrophe. That was our subject line. And if we're looking at it from the client's perspective here, this is what they would receive, right? We know that it was going to be with the signature. We do have the view all listings button. We kept the default for the whole paragraph. Maybe something as well to mention while we're on this screen is just noticing the destination, like where it was sent from. Destination is not the right word, but it did come from the system itself. Okay, so it didn't come directly from Eric at OMDREB and then send out to whoever I chose as a contact, which in this case is Eric at OMDREB. It comes from the MLS system on MLS at northcentralmatrixmail.com. So for that reason, right, if by any chance this email, this welcome letter made its way into my client's junk or spam or anything like that, you can tell them, right, this is the actual address that we're looking for. So that's like your kind of your trusted source on MLS at northcentralmatrixmail.com as well. If for any reason it is going to their spam folder, one of the best troubleshooting steps with emails is having your client add this as a contact. So if I go create new contact in my Outlook and I say, okay, client or just contact name, it could just be matrix. The important thing is that for the address that I put it on MLS at northcentralmatrixmail.com. If I create that as a contact, it's more likely to hit my actual inbox instead of going to spam. So just a bit of a troubleshooting step if you ever run into a scenario with that, okay? Now we have that here. If I click on the view all listings button, that would be me manually accepting to begin the portal experience, okay? That all has to do with the fact that it's going to be an automated service. There has to be like a manual selection to continue through before it goes to that active status. So let's go ahead and click that now. We've already talked about all the different status types. So we'll click on view all listings here. Another thing that we'll be able to test is next time we come in here, we're hoping that it will switch to active. So we'll see some timing there as it changes to that other status. You know what I'll do is I'll actually go to my main page so that could kind of, in case it has to load or anything like that. But now we are in fact in the client portal, which is great. Okay, we're in here with the 5 listings that we chose for our client, right? It's in that area. They can look around, they can kind of zoom in, they can see certain things as they work through, right? Noticing really quickly here that it absolutely was not just like a listing that we individually, like we didn't just email 5 listings to our client. It really is this like interactive space, this portal concept that they're going to be working from, okay? on this main page, right? I mean, pretty straightforward. The left-hand side is made up of an interactive map. The right-hand side is a little summary of the 5 properties. We have our portal header towards the top, the branding we chose, right? Some things from this Tuesday session, the introduction, where we set this up and set up this little couch and stuff like that. One of the tools that your client has on this front screen, and this carries through to the next one as well, is this little heart icon, which might be a little bit significant, especially when we're talking about portal notifications settings in a few moments here, okay? If you click on this heart, you'll notice that your client has the option of a couple of things. They can set as a favorite, they can choose set it as a possibility, or they can even discard the listing. Okay, so maybe after having a look, right, I chose to save this as a possibility. Chose to discard this last listing down at the bottom. I could see on the map, right, this is a possibility, discarded listing, and then there's the 3 that haven't been kind of interacted with. But as their representation, I don't know what the reason is for why they, like, what does a possibility mean to your client? What does why would they discard it, right? So there might be some investigating to do there. Let's hop into one of the listings and see how those tools continue through. So click on the title, 79 Brookfield Road. You can see that we get even more types of kind of interactive maps, right? As I mentioned, I might be able to search things. I could see the parks in the area. Maybe if elementary schools is something that they're after, or kind of things like that. So this is kind of a neighborhood section where you can they can kind of interact and get an idea of, hey, what is it like? What is life like one day in that location kind of thing, right? Where the property is over here. Images of the listing, public remarks over to this left-hand side, and more interactive tools, okay? If client for any reason is trying to tell me something, hey, I really like this one, please send more information, right? Whatever the case may be, adds the note. I'm just gonna quickly do that. There we go. I left a note at 1:58 p.m. Again, we're pretending that we're the client, right? What if they're trying to talk to you inside of this portal? I'm gonna have to notice that at some point, right? Again, the heart is up towards the right. There are some things here that they might be mentioning. So bearing that in mind, seeing all the information here, they look at the listing information through this interactive tool. Okay, there's only 4 listings now because we kind of discarded one, right? So bearing that in mind, awesome. Let's go and see. I wonder if it was quick enough. If we go to our auto email settings, has it activated just yet? It looks like it still takes a little bit of time. So there's like cache memory that updates, and I don't know if it's like 15 minutes or something like that. So eventually this one will kind of switch over. What we will talk about in the meantime, and I'll keep an eye on that and I'll check it again in a second, is now, well, hey, we know a lot of those interactive things that our client might do in the portal, right? It's going to be important that we get familiar with the portal ourselves in case they ask questions. But how do I know that they left a note for me? What if I, down the road, I'm going to have maybe a large pipeline. There's like 50 different auto emails all happening at the same time. I've kind of have a whole bunch of prospects out there. Well, how do I know that one of them left me a note? Okay, a couple ways that you're going to be able to see that. When you go to your contacts section, it'll show you a summary for that particular client. Okay, so you see mine are all kind of fake testing emails, but over to this right-hand side, we can see things like listing notes, favorites, possibilities, and discards. So you can gauge a summary of what's going on for that client. Okay, the next portion is actually in your settings. Okay, there's a section, you remember our My Information was where we went before during the Tuesday session. Now we're going into portal notification settings. These are the really important ones to double check. By default, they're all deactivated. You have to manually hop in here and choose the ones that you want to be notified about. So if I hop into portal notification settings, I have a big chart here where I can choose, hey, how often do I want to be notified, or what method is it that I want to be notified as the representation for all these portals that I've created for clients? Okay. Visits portal for the first time, for example, right? Well, we know the auto email isn't going to be active and start working properly until they visit it the first time. Do I want maybe, do I want an email sent to me when I have that confirmation? I could just kind of do like a mental check that, hey, the one for Stephanie is complete, perfect, right? She's gone in there, she's actually viewed the portal. I can expect that that one is going to change and move to active status. Don't have to worry about that one anymore, right? So something like that. When it comes to the other options, you can receive a text message as your notification if that's your preference. You just go through these steps below the chart. You would just type in your, you would edit your cellular information. It'll send you a code to your cell phone. It's kind of all the major providers here. If I give you an example, right? If I just click on that, you could see it's like TELUS, Kudo, Bell, Verizon, whatever the case may be, right? So you would just set that up. It'll just send you a code to confirm. It'll be the email that it's texting notifications to. And this last column is if you just want a summary instead. So once again, if I'm setting up like, maybe I'm working an admin account and I set up like 10 or 20 auto emails every single day. Maybe I just want a summary instead of the ones that did actually go in and click on that, whatever the case may be. Okay, but you want to click off some ones that you might find important. This is one of those things that's going to be different for every single member though. Okay, so I mean, like, well, if I just started selecting some things to show you though, right, maybe I would look like this. Maybe I want to know when they go in the first time. I definitely want to know when they leave me a note so I can respond in a timely manner. And maybe some of the ones for investigation, right? If they save a favorite, maybe I need to reach out to them quickly enough and say, hey, I noticed you really like that property on, on King Street. Well, let me know, like, what was it about the property? Did you want some more info, right? These are all for your investigation. So setting up something like that. I've seen a lot of members that just have this whole summary all the way down the board. So again, really up to you how many notifications you get. You can always hop back in here. If it's overwhelming and you're like, yo, that's way too many notifications, maybe you're getting too many emails, right? You just come in here and you turn a couple off that maybe aren't that important to you and save that new change, okay? Let's go with that. But definitely important, right? I need to know if my client is favoriting properties in here. I want to know about this in a timely manner, okay? One final thing that I said I would mention about the portal and how you manage auto emails as well is the idea of concierge mode. So if I bring this to the top, you have a widget specified towards your concierge mode auto emails. It looks like I have two that have the auto email concierge mode feature. This is what it would look like if you have listings that need your approval. You could put it like right up front center kind of thing, could be the first thing that you see when you log into Matrix. And what would happen, right, is if I go into one of these, like these are probably really old, who knows how many, if it was like a month ago that I set these up kind of thing. But if I hop in here and I click on this one, this auto email that has 10, well, it shows me those 10. It shows me if they've ever gone to the portal. Being that it's concierge, these have not been sent yet. Okay, but if I go in and I look at these and it's like, okay, having a look, is this what this particular client, Ari Gar, was looking for, right? Hop in there, I can have a closer look. I can kind of make my way back or through the other options here that I'm interested in. Maybe it ends up just being that first one that we do like, okay? And we choose that, oops, sorry, that's the one that we want to approve. Sorry, I meant to click on approve, I clicked on done instead. But for example, right, I can approve the selected. When there's no selection, we can approve all 10 if that's what we wanted, but we would just kind of choose a couple, approve the selected, and finally those listings are going to make it over to the client's portal. Okay, so that's your concierge mode. Here's how you kind of manage the ones coming in. What I would have got as well is, and I think I even got one this morning. Okay, not this morning, but 12:19 a.m. it looks like, if I can open it up. So Erigar concierge alert. A new listing has been found. This listing, right? So here's what the concierge looks like. It looks like was in the morning apparently, but it was more like last night at midnight, a listing was put up on the MLS system that met the criteria for this one. Here's what the notification looks like. Okay, it still comes from North Central Matrix Mail, sends out from the system, but I know from this notification that I have one that's awaiting my approval, right? It's probably one of these 10 or one of these 4 kind of thing. Mine is a little confusing because my concierge mode ones are set up for the same fake email. Let's say it's my Eric Gar version of my name. Okay, so hopefully that kind of explains all the different sides. All in all, though, I would suggest for sure, right? Set up an auto email, create a search, set up an auto email, test it for yourself, look at it from the client's perspective. Find out for yourself how it switches to the active status. Perfect. We finally moved to the bold check mark here, which is really nice. It looked like, as you can see though, there are 2 here that were the same. So I'm probably going to get bombarded because I clicked the welcome email and that's my Eric at OMDREB contact. I'm gonna have to work in here to clear some of these out because I'm gonna start getting a whole lot of emails with my as soon as possible ones. But this one here, right, we'd be able to tell, right, if I had my portal notification settings for that first portal visit, right away I'd be getting like, hey, Eric, your client has gone in and activated it. They've gone in for the first time. Okay, we can see the email that was sent. It was sent at 1:51 p.m. and it was viewed at 1:55. So we had a really, our client's really on the ball on this one. Okay, so you can see all that kind of stuff. If I go, it's maybe an example, right? So sent 2 emails for this one here, property interest activated. I could see when the emails are sent. We can see when our client views them. You can manage all of that from your auto email screen. Okay, perfect. So that really does wrap up and a really thorough look at kind of all those different sides of your portal experience, your client portal, and communicating these listings and sending them to your clients as well. Okay, let's cut that one right there. Spent a good deal amount of time speaking of those different concepts. Let's transition now into that topic number 2 for today's session, which I mentioned is going to be all about the input tab. Okay, so when you are the listing representation, you've filled out an info data sheet signed by your client, and let's say as today being the commencement date, well, we're hopping in, our agreement starts April 1st, we're filling out, putting the listing up on the MLS system. Well, what does that screen look like? What does it feel like to put in that information and activate and submit a listing? That's everything we're going to cover right now. Okay, so all of this happens in the add edit. I can either hover add edit, click on input, or I can just click on add edit. Either way, it's going to take me to this input screen. It all has to do with this section. Okay, if you have any that you've been working on previously, if you have any active ones, you will notice them. There'll be a little drop down right in this listings section. In our case, though, we're just starting from scratch. I made sure to delete all the ones that I had. Maybe I had some incomplete ones that were in the list before. I just kind of got rid of them before the session today because I just want to add new, create one right from scratch. So what we will do is we're going to go through all the different screens of the input, get a really solid foundation for how we approach that and how we, make sure that we're not running into any errors and things like that as we complete it. Okay, so I'm going to click add new. And here's the beginning of it. So the first thing that we have to decide, right, is, well, what kind of listing is this going to be? Right, we understand that when we're running searches, it's the same thing. Residential leases are separated from the residential search. Same goes for the commercial sale, commercial lease, right? Our titles here, well, when you're inputting the listing, you do have to choose the one as well. Okay, so if I was doing a lease, I have to remember I'm clicking on this lease option. We're just going to do residential sale though. All the forms are going to look pretty much the same moving forward, but it is important you click on the right one. I don't want to have to, fill this out, realize it was a lease, and then have to delete it and kind of redo it, right? So we're going to go with sale though, just the most common one. So we'll stick with that one. And from here, you are faced with 3 different options for how you can start this input. Okay. Do we want to fill it from property? That's the default that's kind of selected here so far. So if I was filling it from a property, that just means, hey, is there maybe a previously listed property on the MLS system that I'm going to grab all that information and start from that? Was it listed 6 months ago? Do I want to pull in that info and have most of the form filled out, and I'll just tweak a few things? That's fill from property. It's actually the option I hate the most, so we're going to come back to it. Do I want to fill from Geo Warehouse? Okay, so if you haven't looked at Geo Warehouse just yet, let's maybe take 10 seconds and have a quick look at it. This is an application that you have access to. It's all MPAC data that's put on by TerraNet. It's a very, very interactive tool. I've honestly, when I'm searching for properties, I've got Geo Warehouse open. I'm popping the pins in. I'm looking at the property reports, and I'd say that's probably a really good habit to get into. You'll see, you'll kind of make that decision for yourself in a second. But how you access Geo Warehouse is from your tools section here. So if I hover tools, I've got a Geo Warehouse link. When I click on that, it'll open up a new tab. Right, I'm working on Geo Warehouse separately here from Matrix. This is my Matrix and my ITSO Real Estate tab. Here's my Geo Warehouse tab. And as I let this load and kind of populate this map, you'll notice if I start to zoom in, some things that'll happen. Hopefully my internet is quick enough to load us in with there we go. Okay, perfect. So what you're supposed to see, yep, is these property lines, kind of this MPAC data coming through. Maybe we make our way through to the property that we're going to use as an example today, our main office of OMDREB at the corner of Navy and Church. Right, we could see 125 Navy Street right here. We could see where the property line is set out. Sometimes you can see some visual encroachments or how it's set out. Right, we could tell that it's like a rectangular lot in this particular shape at the corner of Navy and Church, kind of north of Lakeshore Road. Right. If I click on this property, I get to see the PIN, the ARN, the start of the legal land description, things like that. I can even do Street View, or I can go into a property report and track down even more information based on this property. Okay, interactive maps, some satellite views, sometimes topographical views through Google, and things like previous sales. Sale in 94, sale in December 2020. Okay, so on top of that, right, you also can go through and purchase other reports, title reports, assessment reports. You really get into kind of a whole bunch of detail. We won't be going any further than that kind of on what you have access to, but this is a really, really cool application that you have access to right from your tools section. Okay, let me close that up. So if you're filling from Geo Warehouse, you're taking some of the information from that property report and it'll land on your input and you would start from there. Okay, that's option 2. The third option that you have is starting with a blank listing. Pretty straightforward. All the entries that we'll make will just be blank. So this is kind of your third one. Very safe option though, right? You're starting from scratch. There aren't any errors on it. So there's probably some really positive stuff that come from this as well. Okay. I mentioned that I would come back to fill from property and speak on it again, and it has a lot to do with that reason. As far as the options are concerned, I normally never suggest using fill from property. Okay. And the reason for that is because, as you know, there are a lot of MLS rules to follow. If you're filling from property, the only time that I would say is a good idea to use this is if you were in fact the one that listed the property 6 months ago. If you did the input yourself, if you went through meticulously and you trust that there aren't any errors or that no rules were broken on that particular listing, yeah, go for it. Fill from property. But if it was 12 months ago by an agent that you don't know, that might have got fined for that property because they did it wrong, and now it's canceled as a result, right? Or whatever the case may be, right? You might not know that history. If you're bringing in a fill from property, the bottom line is just really make sure that you know everything in there is correct before you submit that listing, because you are taking ownership for it. Okay, so this one, like, you know what it does, right? If you just put in an MLS number, you can track down the MLS information, pull it into your input, hit the ground running with it. But that's up to you, okay? We are gonna go with the fill from Geo Warehouse since we were talking about that tool a second ago. That's just the option we're gonna choose from today. Of course, knowing that starting with a blank is just gonna be like totally blank form, that one's fine as well. We'll go Geo Warehouse so you could see how that works though. So I'll choose that middle option. Now you see this one is bold. It's no longer this one that's selected. We are on the fill from Geo section. It gives you two different ways that you can fill from Geo Warehouse. You can either provide it with the 9-digit PIN that you got from Geo, or you could type in specifically these options. You must enter city, street number, and street name. Unit number is optional. So if I choose to do this instead of the PIN, I know I have to type in everything perfectly. In our case, it's not that bad. It's just 125 Navy. But what if it was like, I don't know, Fisher Hallman Road in Waterloo, and maybe I didn't know exactly how to input that and I messed it up or something. I don't know. There's probably some tougher roads than this. I can't think of them at the top of my head, but just remembering, right? Matrix is very rigid. Things need to be perfect for it to find a result. So city, street number, street name, this one's optional. If I hit search, it's gonna just do a little confirmation screen to make sure I have the right property. So I have, is this the right one? 125 Navy Oakville, current owner is 27927. Like this used to say OMDREB, but it was purchased this past December. Okay, I'm gonna hit cancel. Or maybe I'll just go revise search actually. There we go. So I wanna revise the search because I wanna show you how to do it from the PIN. It does the exact same thing. You're just making the link, right, between Matrix and Geo Warehouse, but we need to get our PIN from Geo. And the reason I want to show you this one is just because as a search engine, what Geo has provided us is a lot more forgiving than what we're used to on Matrix. So I just tend to use this instead. If I start going 125 NAV, even that's enough. I didn't have to go city, street number, street name. It's a lot more, you know, I don't know the word for it. It's just easier to use this search bar. Okay. So if I click on this here, I can even already see the pin. It's right there, right? I'm just going to grab it from here. I pinned it. I can visually see the property. It's the right one, corner of Navy and Church. If I just grab this pin and copy it, I'm good to go. I just pop it in here and it'll do the same thing. I'm doing this instead of the option down below. And if I hit search, it's that screen. Wait, is it really 2792065 Ontario Inc? I can check it by going to the property report if I wanted. And what do we got here? Owner's name, 279265 or whatever the case. Okay, same thing. December 3rd, 2020. It moved from being the OMDREB as ownership over to that, whatever, I'm gonna say private corporation. Hopefully that's actually what it is. Okay. But here we are. When you have this set out, so we saw the two different ways of doing a Geo Warehouse fill, you just click on this fill button and it'll bring in the information that's available on Geo. Okay, it's not overwhelming. It's not gonna like save me an abundance of time, but it does bring in some things that I need anyways, like my PIN, my ARN, so my assessment roll number. It's going to bring in my legal land description, some things that I kind of have to bring over anyways. It'll do partial address information, things like that. So we'll see that when we get to the property tab. I like to start with this one though and use the Geo Warehouse one again, because it is info that I need anyways. Okay. When we are into the actual residential ad edit or whichever ad edit you're going to be working on, they're all going to look very, very similar. Okay, you'll see that from the top, we have this option of working from kind of left to right through the different page titles. Okay, we have a difference between optional and mandatory fields, depending on the page we're working on. So an alternate MLS number, well, it's a white background, so that's an optional one. I don't have to put a value in there, but if I have one, I might put it in. Okay. Property subtype, however, this always kind of makes me laugh because I just don't even know what color that is, but the orangey, yellowish kind of color that's there, those are the mandatory fields. Okay, so I have to fill out 7 of these. I have to do something with 7 of these so that I'm done and finished with the general tab and I can kind of move on. All right. Maybe I shouldn't have said it like that, but I guess since we're talking about it, you aren't forced to do this one first. If I wanted to jump to rooms and details and comments, I can go straight there. I can move around. You are free to take whatever direction you want. It doesn't have to be a left to right approach. Okay, but for the training, I'm going to go left to right just for simplicity reasons. Okay, so we're going to clear these first before we move over to the property tab. Some of one of your best friends as you work through these screens, honestly, is going to be this validate button. I'm going to make a few selections on screen as I work throughout. I'm going to click on validate before I move on. What it'll do is it'll kind of refresh. It'll look over the form and double check that, hey, the things you selected, that it is going to accept those. Okay. And one of the important things about validating is the fact that a lot of the fields that you select, they're dynamic. If I choose that if I choose a property type being a condo, and then I validate, well, common elements here might become mandatory as a result. Okay, notice how I just did one selection. I clicked on validate. It went over the whole form, and understandably, there's a lot of stuff missing here. This exclamation point is going to tell me there are things missing on each of these specific pages, including even on our page, we have 6 left here. Okay, I'm going to switch this over to house though. We're going to do house, and notice how common elements is no longer mandatory. It was when I chose condominium, but when it's a house, I don't have to worry about common elements, things like that. So it is dynamic. One selection on a certain page might yield different mandatory results later on. You'll notice that as you validate, as you save as incomplete and you come back, because it's going to validate those options, you might notice something that you just needed to fill out. But it didn't become mandatory until you selected something specific. So we'll talk about those. So I'll fill these out, just something general here. I know we're working with 125 Navy Street. I'm not going to fill it out as like a commercial building. I'm just going to do house. We're probably going to put a kitchen in there and bathrooms and things like that aren't going to be very relevant, but that's not the point. We're trying to look at what this is going to look like in the residential sense. Do not put too much bearing on my selections. They might not make that much sense. Okay, it's more to understand the screens we're working on. So I'll make some selections here. There we go. No, no, and no. No waterfront at the corner of Navy and Church. Pretty close to a creek, but that's about it. And I'm going to hit validate here. So I've made my 7 selections that I wanted on my main page. Because I have completed those and I've clicked on validate, I now have the exclamation point is gone from my general tab. It's like a little mental check mark that I have for myself that, hey, success, we're done one of our pages that we're going to work through. Okay. The general layout of these forms is meant to look very much like the property information sheet that you would have filled out and had signed by your client as well. Okay, so you're kind of just taking things over from that form that you've completed and moving them online is really what you're doing with this input. Okay, so we've got these selections, we've validated. Let's move to the next one. I will just go to kind of property in this case, and we'll talk about some of those. The ones that cause questions and I get member concerns about, I'll be sure to take some time to talk about those. But again, like some things, like do not worry about what I put for zoning is I mean, like I'm not going to put a correct value in here. That's something that you would have kind of set out in your research and due diligence for the property and signed off with your client, of course. But notice some of the things that did come in, right? We filled from Geo Warehouse. We didn't enter this information ourselves, so have an eye or a quick look at the ones that did come through, like our legal land description, our seller's name came through, we have our PIN and our ARN that we would have to kind of go in and copy over anyways, right? So maybe it only saved me like a couple minutes, but still, like these are kind of specific numbers that you want to get correct anyways. Okay, so let's start filling things out on the property tab. So we've got city is going to be Oakville here. It'll take me there. There we go. Letter O. Oh, I must have went way past it. Oakville. Region is Halton in our case. We have municipality, Oakville, and now that we have a municipality, we can choose our neighborhood, and we have maybe no idea just yet. I know which one it is, of course, but the thing is, a lot of the times, maybe you don't know this off by heart kind of thing. So I'll show you how you can just get it right every time. It has a lot to do with how we drew our map earlier, using that neighborhood layer, which we can do in a few steps when we go to the map. So a little foreshadowing there. I'll leave this one blank. We'll come back to it when we know for sure which one it is. Okay, then we have a whole bunch of optional pieces here. They're all in white. Maybe I'm not going to worry about them for now, unless it was specific info that my client signed off on that property information sheet, of course. Let me just keep moving to some mandatory fields. Even now, right, I might have selected 5 or 6 things. Oh, street type. It's Navy Street. Maybe I'll select that. Maybe I click on validate just to see if I got that top bit right so far. And there's just that one exclamation point left. Okay, and that's it. That's like you end up walking through here in very much that general sense. Okay, if I go zoning, right, ours is going to be probably wrong, but that's okay. Just making some selections here. Directions. Just going to go with what we generally saw when we were looking at it a second ago. Price. Well, it sold for 5.5 in December. Let's be really hopeful and say, you know what, why not? Went up a little bit since then. Why not? Okay, kind of optional so far, but maybe I'll still put in a value. Maybe I had something in mind for this. Okay, perfect. And then kind of moving into some of these other options, right? I might be making some of these selections based on, again, that due diligence that we had before. I don't know the exact answers for these here, but I'm just gonna, okay, there we go. So I think for now, right, I think we got all of our mandatory options. Some things might change based on the fact that we know the form is dynamic, but we've filled everything out except our neighborhood so far. Okay, what we'll do is we'll just go and get that one from our map. We'll do that tab really quick, come back and select our neighborhood, and then we'll do the save as incomplete option and talk about the importance of that bit. Okay, so I'm going to click on map and we'll look at what is available here. Okay, so when you get to this map tab, picture this as being that spot where you are physically choosing, right, where is it on the map that this property pin is going to show up. So it's pretty important that we get this right. Right, we want it to be accurate. We want it to be right on that spot where it actually is. And what it tells us to do in order to get that correct is by using set lat long manually, which is just below here. Okay, it's telling us it's mandatory as well. We know from validating here. But if we make this selection, set lat long manually, a little pop-up window will come up. We'll be able to see a little bit of information of kind of the map, the property, and things like that. You saw there, I clicked on it 30 seconds ago probably. It took a little while for it to load, and I do apologize. I think my internet might be running a bit slow on the slow end today. But yeah, when you click on something, maybe sometimes give it a little bit of time. It looks like it's still found its way here, and we have the pop-up now, which is nice. So the system has a general idea of what we're working with, but it wants us to pin it manually, like really accurately. It knows because on the property screen, we did fill out a little bit about the details. So it kind of centered us close to where it thinks it's going to be. But what it is asking you to do is to actually place a pin. So notice how when I'm hovering the map, I have this like crosshair version of a pointer. And wherever I click is where it's going to drop the physical pin that will become that green pin on the map when other members are searching for our property. Okay, so it's like this little blue pin right now. Well, it is going to become the green pin once we submit it, like later on down the road when other people are looking for it. We know it's right here, right? I could zoom in, I can like really get in there, and is it like this portion of the rectangle? Like whereabouts do you want to pin it? Do you want to pin it right on the actual building portion? Totally up to you. Okay, however, if you want to be more central to the way the lot is shaped, you do something of this nature. Okay, and then when you hit locate, that is your kind of confirmation that that's the spot you wanted. It just centers over top of it, and you can see the new blue circle kind of right in the center of the blue circle. If I think I made a mistake there and I want to place a new pin instead, or I want to reset, right, you can always just click one of these options. All right, see me kind of working with it, and when I'm done and I've located and I'm happy with how it is, of course, I'm just going to hit done. Rather than just jumping to that option right now, however, remembering that we do have a layers icon, and that was our next thing that we were going to do, right? We want to get our neighborhood correct. So we just open up the neighborhood. We know what this is going to do already from what we learned earlier in the session. It puts an overlay on the map, and we can tell because of the pin that we set out, well, we can see really specifically which neighborhood this is going to become a part of, right? We can tell that it is in fact called Old Oakville. Maybe if at the time we were unsure, was this one in Central Oakville? Was it in Old Oakville? But we can see the divider across 16 Mile Creek pretty specifically here. We've got Old Oakville. We can go back and confidently make our selection for neighborhood. Even if we weren't confident about region and things like that, well, we have layers for that. We can make the selections, we can track them down. If I'm listing a property in Kitchener and I don't know the neighborhoods, I come to my map, check my layer, turn on neighborhoods, there you go. You're good to go with that. I don't have to know the Kitchener ones off by heart. I don't need like a chart that's printed out or a map. You can come and get them from here. Okay, I'm going to deactivate the neighborhood tab. We're right here. Click done. Okay, and perfect. We've got our pin on the map. Our map is even done. We don't have the exclamation point anymore. We head over to property. We select Old Oakville. Maybe it takes us a second to kind of find it in the list. There we go. Old Oakville. Apparently it's called 1013 in the list. And we can validate. And just like that, we have completed a significant portion of our input. We've already got 3 of the tabs done. All confirmed here for now, unless there's something that is going to kind of change on the dynamic fields. Always bear that in mind. Okay. What I'd like to do at this point, as I mentioned, right, maybe that was as far as we were planning on going for the day that maybe you're working on this on a Saturday and your commencement date is the Monday or whatever the case may be, and you're just trying to get a little bit of work in and you'll come back to it on Monday when you are activating it. Well, in that case, you might save it as incomplete. Now there is something so important about this. So definitely pay attention to this section. Saving as incomplete must give you a confirmation or else you have not saved. What I mean by that is if I click this button, the screen has to change pretty significantly here to input succeeded. Zoom all the way in on that, okay? Input succeeded, you have to see this. Don't call me next week and say, Eric, I started an input, I spent 45 minutes on it, I can't find it. Let's look for it in the system together. I mean, we will. We'll track it down together. But like, if it's not there, you didn't see this. Okay, this is crucial. If you save a listing as incomplete, it provides you with the MLS number that's going to hold for its lifetime. Okay, this 400 number, once I activate this listing, it will be its MLS number. Okay, I saved it as incomplete. It tells me it has successfully saved as incomplete. It is listing number 400-91187. Okay, I can go back in. I can edit this. I can edit photos. I can do some other steps to manipulate this listing at this point. I can always come back and edit it later though, because I've successfully saved it. Okay. Let me zoom out once again. I don't know which zoom that I had. Let's try something like this, right? I'm going to go continue editing, and I'll show you something really quick here. Here's the other side of the coin. What happens if I did something that did not allow me to actually save as incomplete? Okay, something like this, right? Possession date, you'll see, is a field which requires a calendar value. Possession date, if I chose this, would be April 15th, 2021. This I've seen sometimes, right, to be determined. Well, it cannot work in this field. It has to be a calendar style, right? It has to be something like 06/10/2020 or whatever the case may be, okay? But this will break it. And what you'll notice is something of this nature. When I click on save as incomplete, you'll notice something really different than last time. If I save it as incomplete, I did not get a confirmation screen. I got a really weirdly white piece of paper that has one exclamation point on it, okay? It's trying to tell me, and I can't even validate, like things are looking really weird on this screen. It's like the system is trying so hard to tell me that I've broken something. Specifically, I've broken this one here. It cannot accept this value. As a result, it has not saved any of the new work that I've done, right? If I filled out all those other screens and then got to this point and tried to save as incomplete, and then I just closed the tab or something, right? I didn't close it there, but if I did, right, I'd have, nothing would be saved, okay? You have to be really careful with that. So I'll just erase that. That was an optional field. I got rid of the error, and now I'll save as incomplete. I'll actually get a confirmation. You have to get this confirmation, and then you know you've saved it as incomplete. Okay. I did get a couple of questions in the chat there. I just want to look at them very, very quickly here in case something I'll double check, and then we'll hop right back into the input in a second. Okay, good question. No problem. I'll just address that question very, very quickly here, since they mentioned that they do have to head out. You can always watch the recording of this session later as well, by the way, and I will show how to do that towards the end of the session. It's all accessed in the video training bank in your members area. But the question was, and it kind of reverts back to something we worked on earlier. I'll just take 30 seconds to mention it though. It says, hey, how can I send a memberful version of a single email? Very, very simple there. Oops, I'm gonna go to my recent searches. I'm gonna pull up the one that had 5 listings that we were working on. Instead of creating an auto email, if I just take one of them and I click on email, you'll notice very similarly, there's a display line with an additional button, and you could just change this to memberful. So that's not an auto email, but if I fill this out and I send it, it will send a memberful. Okay, same thing. It looks really, really similar. When you're on the auto email screen, it was just kind of one of the status and kind of one of the lines, but that would be your path for that. Okay, hopefully that answers that question. The other one that you asked was about the input. And I'm going to go into the input tab. You can see that now I do have a drop down of my saved incomplete listing. And you can tell that it's incomplete because of this letter at the start, this letter I. Once it's active and we've submitted it, we'll actually change to the letter A, residential. And it'll still have this number, 400-91187. Okay. This is our modify listing screen, which we'll talk about later. It's how you change the statuses. And you can add additional things like your photos and supplements. I'm just going to click on residential sale add edit though, which takes us back into the form we were working on. Okay, I'm going to hit validate as I start in case anything has changed, and to double check the form and things like that, which they have. Looks like maybe there was a dynamic field that we missed, and we'll go in and make a selection. Okay. I'm not sure that I completely understand the question, however. If you are still here, the question was, how do we answer facing on tab? I don't know if you're talking about fronting on or something like that. Let me know if that's what you were looking for. But I mean, this is always a kind of a, if you are talking about this one, this is kind of a really tough one to answer. I'm definitely no expert in making this correct selection. Yeah, I mean, when I look at the map and I look at ours specifically, having a look at kind of the description that we gave it and how it kind of fronting the Navy Street office, I would say is fronting onto Navy Street. But how you do your exposure and stuff, yeah, you may have to, you know, I might even have to inform myself how to give you a direct answer on that. A little bit of a kind of a one that you would have already kind of selected this on your property information sheet and made the selection, though. It is optional in our system, though. Okay. Okay, so as far as some other stuff, it looks like there was a couple things that moved to that mandatory status through the dynamic fields. Okay, kind of expected a couple of them to pop up, right? We chose a year built range. It just wants us to have a year built source. Okay, do we have, is HST applicable or is it included? Okay, year built source. Maybe we did track down builder's plans and our builder's plans have kind of the date of the build. We might be able to get our square footage and things like that for later on from this source as well. We may make those selections. We'll hit validate and move to the next tab. Okay. So we're coming up on 2:45. So as far as the portions of what we'll be kind of discussing here moving forward, things I want to show you, right? A lot of these next tabs are going to be very, very straightforward with regards to the property information sheet you filled out. So I might not make 100% of the selections. I will definitely talk about some of the ones that sometimes bring up some questions, though. Things like the commencement date and stuff like that on the brokerage tab. So we'll hop there in a second. There's not too much on the interior, however. That's mostly property information sheet related. And then we're going to spend a good 5-10 minutes or so talking about rooms, details, comments. We're going to finish up by talking about how you add your photos, and then we'll talk about the modify listing screen. There's one more thing. We're going to look at a preview of our listing as we conclude. So we'll look at a preview, we'll conclude, I'll show you where the video training bank is, and then we'll do maybe a bit more of a question and answer. Okay, so kind of the last 15 minutes or so, I'll kind of cram in those different ideas for you. So moving into the brokerage section here, you'll see your information come through. Okay, as I mentioned, one thing that I do get questions on, however, is kind of commencement date, right? So to give you the kind of the exact answer for how does the commencement date actually work? Well, from the time that you sign this agreement with your client, right? Let's say that we'll use today as an example. April 1st is the commencement date, you know, on the property information sheet. That's the client that we the representation and whatever agreements we have, we sign them with our client as we're putting up their information, their property on the MLS system for April 1st. Well, based on the MLS rules, how soon do I actually have to put that property available on the market? What is my timeline? And it is actually 24 hours, okay? You have 24 hours from the commencement date, but how that looks in a more practical sense is midnight the following day, okay? So if April 1st is my commencement date, technically I can still submit it as my commencement date being April 1st. The system will allow me to submit it, right? As long as I'm doing it within that 24-hour window. And the MLS rule is following day at midnight. The system will still account for like public holidays or business days, that kind of thing. But that 24-hour rule is the one that kind of applies if ever you have a question about commencement date, okay? If I was in fact saying that my commencement date was let me see here. Hope it's this button for March, right? Like if I put March 25th in here, system won't accept it. It won't let me submit this. Once I'm finished everything and I go to try and submit, it won't let me because too many days have passed. It does have that allowance that it'll let you complete it. If it's too far out, I might have to amend my documents that I have and my representation with my client to reflect that. And I would change it. We amended it. It's actually April 1st that we're doing it. Let's make that selection. Now the system will accept it. Okay, so just if you're looking for timeline answer, it is midnight the following day. So in our case, even if we did, you know, I mean, the sooner you're going to have the listing up is just going to be better for your marketing efforts. But in case you did wonder about that question, it is midnight the following day. Okay. Rest are pretty straightforward, and they're definitely going to be things that you have set out with your client long ago before putting this on the MLS system, right? So let's go, just so you know though, compared to TREB, in case there are some dual members, you can actually, there is no minimum or maximum that you have. You can, for your expiration date. Okay, if this was actually just a 2-week thing and it was expiring the 15th or something like that, okay, you can select that. There's no minimum. The 2 weeks is fine kind of thing, or the 1 week is fine. But I mean, in our case, we're just going to choose something like May 31st, let's say. So we're just doing like a 60-day kind of 2-month representation here with this expiration. Buyer agency compensation, again, a lot of these things are going to be really up to your agreement, yourself, your brokerage, your client, that kind of stuff. Okay. Getting kind of a bunch of questions coming through just with regards to things like days on market and stuff like that. With what I have to cover before 3, I'm absolutely, and I do apologize, I'm going to have to keep it for the question and answer following 3 p.m. Okay. So I will get back to that. As far as these other ones though, I'll just kind of have a quick look through. Very, very straightforward stuff. However you do your showing requirements, your instructions, things like that. Something I will mention though is that there is a box for offer instructions. Okay, please don't put things like, sorry, you can put it in here. Okay, please email all offers to eric@omdreb.ca. This is the place for it. Offer instructions. Please do not go and put this line in your public or private remarks. That's not the place for it. Okay. Your offer instructions are set out for that. You have 250 characters to work with. One of the MLS rules, you can't put your direct marketing, branding, your email, things like that in the public remarks. That is not the place for it, but you can do that in the offer instructions. This is the spot for it. Okay. So working through here, yeah, very specific to your brokerage setup, your showing instructions, your showing service that you have. Is it showing time? Is it broker bay? Is it something else? That's determined by your brokerage. The brokerage that you're a part of would have chosen on their administrative account what kind of showing scheduling style they use. Yours is going to be different than someone at a different brokerage, most likely. Okay, they set that out at the brokerage level if you ever have questions about it. So the rest of this page, yeah, very, very straightforward stuff with regards to your agreements. And you will definitely see these selections all throughout your info data sheet. So these ones, right, choosing if it's municipal sewers, things like that, very, very much info data sheet related. Okay. So let's get into the rooms and detail section. Okay. With this one here, and definitely bear with me. I know a little bit unconventional with the way that it is on our system, but this is the way that ITSO has it as the standard for all 21 boards and associations that are putting up their listings. Okay, so yes, I know that, you know, a decimal 0.08 is in no way represents physically like 8 inches. So don't treat it as a decimal. This is just kind of the way that they've chosen this input to look. Okay, you can see examples of dimensions and what they will look like little bit of like a legend or table towards the side as well. So things like 19 feet, 11 inches, 19.11, 8 feet, 10 inches, 8.10, right? 1 inch is 0.1, just like as shown here. Okay, so we're gonna follow this as we choose the dimensions for the rooms we're adding. It is mandatory that you add each room individually here. Okay, so this is a really important part to get correct. Okay, and they do show up in the order that you choose them. So if I do, you know, like bedroom first, followed by bathroom, followed by kitchen, like that's the order that they're gonna show up when I submit. So bear that in mind, maybe have a bit of a plan as you go into it as well. Okay, like what I mean is if I put kitchen last, I'm not gonna be able to drag it to the top later on. It's gonna hold that order. I'd have to delete them all. It's not very user-friendly in that sense, so just bear that in mind. What I'm gonna do to start here though is I'm gonna I'll just set out a couple of different room types, and then we'll talk about how the fields are dynamic and what types of things become mandatory on those. So if I just do something like a main floor bedroom, okay, for mine, I'm gonna have to scroll to the right to get my more button here so that I can have a second room. Hopefully you'll be able to see all yours on screen all at once, but I'm just kind of zoomed in, right? If I zoom out a bit, I could see the more button, the delete button, things like that. I'll just zoom back in one more time and we'll go main floor bathroom. Okay. So in this case, I made two different selections, a bedroom compared to a bathroom. And if I hit validate, what I want to show you is the mandatory fields are different based on the room that you're working on. If I hit validate, okay, notice for these two rooms, something really specific is different and mandatory. When you're dealing with a room, the dimensions of the room are the mandatory fields you must enter. The room features become optional. Is it a hardwood floor, right? That kind of thing. Those are optional, but for a room, dimensions are really important. When it's a bathroom, it's the opposite. You don't have to put in the dimensions for a bathroom. If you have them, definitely put them in. It's like extra info is only going to help. However, the important part for a bathroom, as you may know, is it a full bath? Is it a half bath, right? So it comes down to the number of pieces that make up that bathroom. That's the importance. Am I choosing 3-piece? Am I choosing 2-piece? Things like that, okay? So we'll start with the bedroom, we'll tackle these two, and then we'll hit validate and look at what the minimum looks like, okay? So for room length, I'm just gonna make something up here. Let's go 22 feet, 3 inches. Remembering, I definitely hit my keyboard, but the 0 didn't pop in. Remembering that it has to be in this way, right? It's not 0.3, it is definitely 0.03 for the room length, okay? So maybe I'm gonna go 20 feet, 11 inches following that one. And it does take that same type of order for how you do the inches after this dot, okay? Is this feet or meters is also mandatory. So ours, we are doing 22 feet, 20 feet, right? So we'll choose that as our unit of measurement. Going to the bathroom for this one, right? We don't have, this is optional. Maybe on our property information sheet, we decided not to make a selection for that. So we're just going to move to the bathroom. Maybe we don't actually enter dimension for this one here, but we do have to choose, right? All right, this main floor bathroom has a sink, a toilet, and a shower, let's say. Well, we're going to say that it is a full bath. There are 3 pieces in this bathroom. So we're going to make that selection. If I click validate at this point, it'll go over and double check that everything is good to go. And we do have the check mark for these 2 rooms that we've set up. Okay. I'm going to add a couple more because when we look at the preview, so I'm not going to do like 15 rooms and kitchen, all that kind of stuff, but I'll do 2 more just so that when we look at the preview of our listing in a few moments, we could talk a little bit about things like above grade, below grade, things like that. Okay, so instead of main floor, I'm going to go basement. I'm going to go bedroom. Do really similar here. We know this is the part that's going to become mandatory. So we'll go, you know, maybe this one's a bit smaller, 19 feet, 5 inches by, I don't know, 18 feet even. just 18 feet. And those are feet. I gotta go get my more button for the bathroom in the basement, which is just gonna be a half bath. Bathroom, 2-piece, validate. Now we have 4 rooms in our current hypothetical house. We have 2 bedrooms, 1 in the main floor, 1 in the basement, 2 bathrooms, a full bath on the main floor, a half bath in the basement. This one was just a sink and toilet kind of thing, smaller one. Okay, I'll delete this last one. As you enter rooms, an extra one comes through at the bottom. You can just click delete on that. And now we are into kind of that last thing of our input. Things like inclusions, exclusions, and of course our public remarks. Okay, so just to say really, really quick couple of words before we go and look at this preview of our listing. When it comes to your public remarks, notice how much space you have to type something up. Okay, so please keep an eye, like, I mean, use this space for what it is. You have a lot to work with. Testing the amount of characters in this field. I don't know, right? I copy this over and I start like pasting it. We'll watch the characters go down. The size of this paragraph is gargantuan, and I still have hundreds of characters remaining. You really can type up one heck of a message, let's call it, okay? So it eventually will tell you when you have 0 left. If I keep going, I've gone over the maximum. Okay, but like this is a huge, huge, huge paragraph, okay? And all I want to like get across the line here is like, please don't be that person that's just like, this is a nice house. Okay, like there's nothing worse than like when I'm looking through some listings and I run into one that's literally 1 sentence that's poorly written. Just like, please, you have a space here. You're marketing this property. Use that space and understand that your target audience is massive these days. Joe Blow is going to find your listing on realtor.ca whether you like it or not. That kind of thing, right? It might not be an agent or another realtor or someone that's calling you. It might just be like someone that's looking on realtor.ca, someone that's looking on a different MLS system. Like we all know the names of kind of random ones that are available. So, I mean, at the end of the day, you're listing this property, make it, I want to say almost dumb it down, make it something they understand, right? So like this isn't going to fly either on the other side of that coin. Only an agent would understand what this is. I almost don't even know what this is. Okay, so make it so that any individual that's reading or looking at this listing can understand what it is you're sharing with them and describe this property. Just bear in mind, right, your audience is quite vast these days. Private realtor remarks, you also have a very large amount of characters to work with it. Okay, that was that section where I was saying earlier, like, don't put send offers to Eric at OMDREB. This is a no-no. Don't put this here. It goes in your offer remarks on your brokerage tab over here. Okay, when you're finished with this, right, and everything was completed, well, we would save it as incomplete. The last thing we have left is adding the photos, and then we can submit it. It is mandatory that you have photos. So even if I click this now, if everything was done, it wouldn't let me submit it until I did go do the photos. The spot where you have the photos, a couple places, when you save as incomplete, it's kind of just pinwheeling here. Again, I apologize about my internet being a little bit slow here, but I'll give it a second to finish. One of these days. There we go. Input succeeded. All right. Success. That's what we want, right? That's good news. You can add the photos from here, right? I can add the supplements. I could add the photos. That's one spot where you have the option. The other spot is from your modify listing screen. So if you go into the input and you select your incomplete listing, as I mentioned, this is the screen that you use. Yours is going to look different than mine. This is an association staff account, right? But you're going to see all the statuses that are allowed for your user type. So as it goes through its life, changing it to active, changing over to conditional, the conditions are met, it's now pending, it's moving over to its close date, that kind of thing. I can even delete the incomplete listing if this was just a test and I want to get it out of here. Okay, so your modify listing is the other place where you also manage your photos. So you can click on that from here and you just browse them in, right? I would browse my computer, I'd bring in the photos. It gives me my recommended file size, 1024 by 768 pixels. Okay, make your browse your selection, add in your photos, certify and save. From the ones that I've done, I would say that in my mind, the easiest ones to put in, the easiest way to put in the photos in the right order is whatever folder you have, right? I create a folder, and when I save all of my photos in here, I would just basically would just name them like 1 to 50. I name them 1 to 50. I know photo number 1 is going to be my main photo. I find that's the easiest. Let's say I have 20 photos in the folder where maybe my media person sent me like 50, but there's only 20 that I want. I'll just name 20 of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 20. And then when I browse, I could just browse in all 20 of them at a time. I find that's the easiest way. Whichever way works for you, kind of go with it. But I find that because the screen is a little finicky, you start dragging them into the order that you want. It could get a little confused that way. It's just easier to bring them in right in the order you'd like. Chronological is probably the easiest way to do that. But you bring them in, you certify and save, and you're good to go there. We hit cancel here, so we back out. I did have a question. What are supplements? Yeah, really good question. So supplements are just like attachments that you're going to include. I don't have a really good word for it other than that, but it's just like, is there a Schedule B that is coming along with this? Is there maybe a survey that might be relevant for the clients? Maybe it's a piece of land that you're selling and you provide something about the soil sample test or something as a supplement. Any kind of buyer agent that's looking at it can track that down, inform their clients, part of their due diligence and stuff like that. So supplements is an attachment that you want the buyer agent to have access to. Okay. Perfect. Manage photos, manage supplements. We know how to change the statuses. That last thing that I mentioned was just looking at a quick preview of your property. So how you do that is by going into your My Listings section. So if we hover My Matrix and we click My Listings, we would see, well, not the board incomplete ones, there's too many there. Just for mine would be, right, or for yourself, My Incomplete and Pending Activation. Notice that you have to toggle this little drop down. I get this call a lot. Eric, I've got a listing, it's active, but when I come into my Matrix, My Listings, there's no listings. Yeah, you gotta switch this view here, okay? If you switch this to, in our case, not active, but incomplete, we will be able to see our incomplete listing with the glorious 5.9 million value. 911 is that kind of 400 number that we remember. And because we have no photo, it's probably just going to show us a silly little default here, but we can see some information, right? Ours is still blank. We never did public remarks and things like that, but the things we entered, we can preview, including our 4 silly little rooms that we have. Okay. So we have our, a little chart that describes some of the things. So I did want to show you this so everybody's aware, right? The chart, or kind of, it describes it and shows you what it refers to in the parentheses. So we have a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom for our case. This will be the exact same for all 21 participating boards of ITSO. When you have a 1+1 on our matrix system, it means 1 bedroom above grade and 1 bedroom below grade. So if you're a dual member of other boards where that might be different, bear that in mind. You might have to communicate that with your client. Okay, this isn't meant to be a den on our system. That's the reality. Okay, some boards, it's like, I think on OMDREB, I've heard other members say that it's a +1 is a den. That's not the case on ITSO Real Estate. Okay, above grade, below grade, and you can see the ones for the bathrooms, pretty specific as well. We have 2 bathrooms and we have a 1 plus 1. Okay, so 1 full bath, 1 half bath. That was like our sink, toilet, shower, and we have our sink, toilet in the basement. That was a smaller half bath. Okay, you can see all the info, the selections you've made, the MLS number it'll be assigned to, right? You can see yourself as the listing salesperson based on the info on your account. Look at it, view it. It's not active right now. Really, really good time to double check everything's correct. And when you're ready, you go back in the input and you can actually go to your modify listing. You can either change it to active or submit the listing when you're all done with it. Okay. Wraps up everything that I have for today. I do apologize. I've been trying to speed through this last part. I was overly thorough with the first half, and we did go over our time a little bit here past 3 o'clock. So I do apologize for that. I'm just going to do a very, very quick conclusion before we transition into the question and answer period that I promised. Okay, one thing that I want to show is, and I forgot to show this at the start, is just if you ever want to view a recording of these webinars, okay, you can access that through the video training bank. If you don't have access to the members area because you're a subscriber or you're joining OMDREB in some other means, let me know and I'd be happy to share the recording with you. But you can access the new ones yourself through the members area. Okay, so I went to external links on Matrix here. If I click on members area, on the left-hand side, it gives you all the menu options that are with regards to your personal and your private account. And Video Training Bank is here towards the bottom. If I click on that, this is the archive of all the webinars where the keynote speakers have given us access to the recording to share with our membership. Okay. If you're looking for a session much like today's, you would look at the ones here towards the top, intermediate, ITSORealEstate.ca features, and you would see the video would start up. Okay, if I wanted to, a week from now, I'm doing an input. I know it's somewhere, give or take, halfway through. And as you can see, we're getting into the residential ad edit, for example. First half was all about the auto email. Second half was all about the input. So you can always access, those recordings, members area, video training bank, make your selections.